Imagine you're a puzzle piece in a masterpiece where every edge and curve is uniquely designed to fit seamlessly into a bigger picture. Now, consider this. Are you the missing piece that completes the puzzle, making it a whole and beautiful? Or are you the piece that leaves an empty void, disrupting the harmony of the masterpiece? Today, we continue with our with episode 159, what we talked about last week. Remember what we were discussing? Are you an asset or are you a liability? That's the question for today. Episode 159. Hello there, gang. This is the 30. I am your host, Patrick. Want to thank you for being here on another week. Of course, episode 159. Make sure that you like this episode. If you are watching us from YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our channel. We do this each and every week. If wherever you are watching this from, make sure you like and share the broadcast. Thank you for being here. Of course, this is the 30. What do you think it was? The 30 is brought to you by the Jackman Group LLC. This is where we provide relevant information to help you enhance your personal, professional, and spiritual lives. On this episode, we are going to continue our focus, what we started last week. And if you're watching us live, make sure that you drop your questions or comments in the chat. I want to hear from you. The big question is, as a leader, are you an asset or are you a liability to your team and organization? That is the question, part 2 of this very important question. Our purpose of this episode is to take a deep dive into the qualities and behaviors and traits that make a leader either an asset or a liability. And my goal is to encourage you to really take some time to reflect and also ask those that are around you. If you're a leader of teams, make sure you get some feedback from them and see and ask them, are my actions and behaviors, does it make me an asset or a liability to you as the team or to the organization as a whole? So whether you are a seasoned executive or mid-level manager or supervisor, or you aspire to be a leader, my hope is that by having these conversations on this very important topic will provide you valuable insights and help you to enhance your leadership effectiveness as you move forward. So, are you an asset or are you a liability? So last week we discussed in depth the asset leader. what we call the asset leader, meaning, are you an asset as a leader? Are you an asset to your team and to your organization? We talked about asset leaders and liability leaders, but we mostly focused last week on the asset leaders. This week, we're going to pivot and talk about liability leaders. As a leader, are you a liability to your team and to your organization? If you were here live last week or you watched it in replay, we define an asset leader as someone who embodies the qualities and demonstrate the behaviors that have a positive and transformative impact on both the team and the organization as a whole. We went through 5 key characteristics and traits that asset leaders carry, and we talked about why someone would like to be an asset leader, right? As an asset leader, you bring value. We discussed that you bring value both to your team and to your organization. As an asset leader, you are also sought after because you contribute significantly to the success and growth of the team and the achievement of any of the organizational goals. So, your team members, your peers, they seem to gravitate towards you, they are drawn to you. So, the question again, before we move in and pivot to a liability leader, are you an asset leader or are you a liability leader? Also, if you know any asset leaders, if you work with any, if you have any leaders, if you yourself are if you are an asset leader, drop it in the chat. Say, I am an asset leader or I'm a liability leader, but give us the reason why. So we want to know what have you done, what traits and characteristics that you have that makes you an asset leader. Everyone aspire to be an asset leader. Every leader would like to be an asset to their team and their organization. Every employee would like to be an asset to their organization, whether it's in corporate, whether it's a small business, whether it's for a non-for-profit, or whatever it is. I would think every employee and every leader would like to be an asset to their organization. However, it doesn't happen all the time. We have seen, I personally have seen some leaders that are liabilities or were liabilities to their organization. Not the ones that I deal with now, not the ones that we train or coach, but I've seen in my past, right? As I was both an employee and a leader and had leaders, right? I have seen where there were some liability leaders. So that's what we're going to go with on today's episode. So what are some of the key characteristics and traits of a liability leader? How do we define a leader that is a liability? What does it look like, right? So basically, a person, a liability leader is one that brings no value or limited value. I shouldn't say no value, limited value to their organization or to their team. One that people generally avoid, right? If they come into a room, the room kind of get gloomy. So that's a true definition of a leader that is a liability. It brings limited value to the organization, limited success or growth to the organization or to their team. So let's look at some of the key characteristics and traits. And we're going to start here, and maybe this will carry over to our next session. But let's look at, I'm going to give you 5. If you missed last week, because we give you 5 things for asset leaders, make sure that you watch that episode first, episode 158, and then watch this if you're watching it in replay. So a liability leader or a leader who is a liability to their team or organization, number one, the number one thing that this person does is that they demonstrate a lack of accountability, right? It's everyone else's fault. So they may make mistakes. Uh, they may not do the things that is necessary for their team success, right? Or they may have, we all have shortcomings, but sometimes, sometimes, if our actions or decisions or mistakes fall short, it's up to us as a leader to own up to those things. What a liability leader does is that, as opposed to taking accountability for their actions or decisions or mistakes, what they do is that they avoid taking this responsibility. They put it onto someone else. They blame someone else. So rather than owning up to it, says, it was me, or I made the mistake. I made the wrong decision. I shouldn't have made that decision. I didn't take the action that I should have. As opposed to owning up to it, they run away from it. They blame someone else. It's always someone else's fault, as opposed to their fault. And the question is, do you know anyone like that? Do you know any of your previous leaders that fell or fall into that category? Drop it in the chat. We'd love to hear from you and see if any of your previous leaders or current leaders, don't put their names in, but just says, yes, I know of someone that is a leader that demonstrates the lack of accountability. That is number one for a liability leader. So let's continue. Number two, the second trait or characteristic of a leader that is a liability to their team or organization is one who struggled to effectively communicate with your team. And because of that lack of communication or ineffective communication, that leads to misunderstanding. The result or the end cost is that there's misunderstanding to their team. So the team members don't know what to do because the person is not effective in their communication. There's also misalignment, which leads to reduced productivity. So not only does the team suffer, but an organization also suffers. We're not saying that you should be one that is fully articulate in your communication. But as a leader, when you are ineffective in communication, saying what needs to be said, to be clear, to be concise, this leads to misunderstanding, the team not knowing exactly what to do. So there has to be clarity. There has to be clarity in the things that you are assigning. If you're assigning tasks, clarity, and clarity in the vision of the organization or your team, clarity in the task, right? Clarity in everything that you do. So liability leaders or leaders who are liability to their teams and organization struggle with effective communication. The third key characteristic or trait of liability leaders is that they tend to micromanage their team or team members. They're demonstrating a lack of trust and confidence in their team members' abilities. So the result of micromanaging, but the outcome is that it can stifle creativity. It can erode team morale. No one wants to be micromanaged. I tell you what, I've been there, done that, right? And throughout my professional career, I've had a couple of those. No names, but I've had a couple of those. And there's nothing worse than being micromanaged. Having someone all over you at every time, wanting to know everything, not trusting you, wanting to be included on everything. So there's a lack of trust. There's an absence of trust. They're not having a confidence in your abilities to get the job done. It makes you wonder, why did they hire you? if they didn't trust you? Why hire a person if you don't have confidence in their ability? Some leaders may say, well, they started out good, but then uh, their abilities kind of suffer. Well, then it's incumbent upon you as the leader to develop them. That's part of your responsibility. So the third characteristic or trait of a liability leader is that they tend to micromanage. If you are that person or that leader who micromanages teams, and I've heard all types of excuses as to why the team member needs to be micromanaged. But I'm telling you now, if you are that person and you can't help it, I would say to you, cut it out now. Because all you're doing is hurting the team member, is hurting the team, and is hurting the organization. So no one should have to deal with that long term. I can see at the beginner stage where you're directing a person, and we talk about this in our training, where you're directing them, you're giving them tasks in terms of following up to make sure that the task is done. But if the person is being there for a while and you're still micromanaging, it's not about them, it's about you. It's about you, the leader. It speaks to your own insecurities as a leader. So no more micromanaging of your team members. Number 4, the fourth trait or characteristic of a liability leader or a leader who's a liability to their team is that these leaders are usually resistant to change. Well, change is inevitable. Change happens with or without you. But the liability leader, they are slow or resistant to adapt to change. They're slow and resistant to adapting to new challenges. And by doing this, what it does, it hinders the organization's ability to evolve. It hinders the organization's ability to stay competitive. It keeps you down. It keeps you just ordinary. It keeps you stagnant. So as a leader, if you are a liability to your organization, as I said, the fourth is that you're resistant to change. Change is good. We welcome change. It shakes things up. So don't be resistant to change, because guess what? It's going to happen whether or not you like it. It's going to happen. So you could as well embrace it and move on. Number 5, and this is a big one. The leader's ineffectiveness to delegate. And the root of that is that the leader does not trust the team member, right? They don't trust them. So because of the lack of trust and their abilities and their skill set, they don't feel that they should delegate to that person. I'm not speaking of over delegating, but I'm speaking about empowering, trusting, empowering, and delegating. Because that's one of the ways you will truly find out what the person is made of. You'll truly find out that person's skill set. You'll truly find out that person's competencies or lack of. So leaders who struggle with delegation, what happens is that they tend to take on too much themselves. These are leaders that want to hoard everything for them. They're fearful of giving a task to someone because they may not do it like them. But there's only one you. There's only one them. So of course no one is going to do it like you, the leader. They may do it better. So trust in your team's ability, trust in their skill. So what happens is, by the lack of delegating, as the leader, you're taking on way too much, which can lead to burnout, which can also lead to preventing your team members from fully utilizing their skill sets and potential. So as a leader, as an organization, Embrace the importance of delegation. Embrace the importance of trusting and empowering those that are on your team. Don't try to take everything on. This is mine, 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 mine. It sounds more like a spoiled child, right? You just want to keep everything to yourself, which eventually, I guarantee you, it will lead to burnout. Number 6, and we're going to stop at number 6. There's many more here, but I may bring those up next week. Not sure yet, but let's look at this. Number 6 is liability leaders are inconsistent in their decision making. Sometimes these leaders may be too impulsive, or, as I said, inconsistent with their decisions. The end result, what happens is that it causes confusion within the team. So now the team doesn't know exactly what to do, when to do it, because of your inconsistency in decision making. All these come about from a root of fear, right? Fearful as a leader, being timid as a leader. So liability leaders are those who are fearful, being timid in making decisions or in terms of leading. So you may know individuals that are liability leaders. I want to hear from you. Let's have a conversation. Do you know any liability leaders? Are you yourself a liability leader? Do you want to free yourself from being a liability leader? Because the goal is not to be a liability. The goal is to bring value to your team and to your organization. That should be the goal. Does everyone fall into that? No. Sometimes we need help, right? Sometimes we need help. So as leaders, if you fall into the category as being a liability leader, here's what happens to your team and to the organization. You undermine your team cohesion. You create barriers to success. And you risk the organization's ability to achieve its objectives. So that's what happens with liability leaders. Leaders who are liability to their teams and organizations. Your leadership style and behaviors have a negative impact on your team, on the morale of the team, negative impact on productivity, and an organization's overall performance. So I'll ask the question again. Are you an asset to your team and organization, or are you a liability? So as leaders, we need to reflect on this very important question. We all do. We need to take time to really look at ourselves, reflect on our leadership style and our leadership competencies and traits. Seek feedback from our team members, from your team members. Seek feedback from your peers and ask them the question, how am I showing up? Am I showing up as an asset, or am I showing up as a liability? So these are the things that you really need to internalize, because we may think that we are demonstrating value to our team and our organization. In our minds, we may think that we are assets to the organization and to our teams. But if we really reflect on our style and our behavior, and we seek feedback from our team members and from those around us, they may see a different person than what you see. Because we can be blinded as leaders, especially those that have not done any type of professional or personal development. We may see ourselves one way, but those around us may see ourselves in a totally different way. We talk a lot about this with leaders and teams when we talk about the strengths that you bring, right? We may bring some strengths, but when we look at it, when we overdo that strength or misapply that strength in the eyes of others, those strengths now show up as weaknesses. So we may show up thinking that we are assets to our teams and our organizations. But as we seek feedback from those around us, as we seek feedback from those that we interact with, as we seek feedback from our teams, it may look very different than how we see ourselves. So take some time. Take some time to reflect on your behaviors and your leadership style and see how you show up. So if the feedback comes back that you are less than an asset, but more of a liability leader, what do you do? Of course, you accept the feedback, but you go further. You take a step further. You accept the feedback, and now you actively work to overcome those traits and behaviors. So you accept, now you put things into action to overcome what people have told you in terms of you being a liability. So it's critical for leaders to become assets rather than liability to their team. So right now, if you're a liability, you can turn that around. You don't have to be a liability all the days of your leadership reign or your leadership skill or your leadership tenure. You don't have to be a liability. You can pivot and make the change. And if you need assistance with the journey in terms of moving from a liability leader to an asset leader, or you simply need to enhance your leadership effectiveness. Let's say that you are an asset leader now, but you need to enhance your leadership effectiveness even more. So here's what you do. I want you to get in contact with me. Whether you're an asset leader who want to take the step further, or if you are a liability leader who would like to become more of an asset leader, get in contact with me. Because we here at the Jackman Group, we work with leaders to help them enhance their leadership skills through our leadership training. Or if you are a skilled leader, but you want to take your leadership effectiveness to the next level, we'll be happy to partner with you as part of our group coaching or one-on-one coaching program. So whether it's training in terms of learning greater skills to become a more effective leader, or if you are a skilled leader, but you want to take your leadership effectiveness to the next level, then you can also come through our group coaching or our one-on-one coaching programs. So, or if you are a leader of teams, meaning you lead managers or leaders, and you want to upskill their leadership competencies, touch base with me. Get in contact with me. Get in contact with our team. You can do that you can either email me, email us at info@jackmangroup.llc.com, or I'll put my calendar link in the chat. I'll drop that below. After this program, you'll see that wherever you see the show. Book some time with me. So either email me email us, or you can book some time where we can chat with you as a leader, or if you have teams of managers or leaders or supervisors and you would like to upskill them, or you would like to be part of our group coaching yourself, or you would like to be part of our one-on-one coaching program. Either way, give me an email or book some time. So thank you for being here. I want to thank you for spending time with me today. That's all for now. Until then, make sure that you share this episode. Make sure if you're watching from YouTube, subscribe to our channel, Jackman Group at Jackman Group LLC. All right. Until then, be safe. May God bless you and your family. And I look forward to seeing you back here next week. Tell someone, repost it, share it, because we're as we continue talking about the essence of leadership. So until then, see you. Peace.